Rex was more than just a dog, he was a legend. A massive, black Belgian Malinois, with eyes like steel and a snarl that froze grown men in their tracks. He'd been imported from Europe, trained by elite handlers, and purchased by Jackson Myers, a multimillionaire who made his fortune in private security. Jackson didn't just want a guard dog, he wanted the best, and he got him. But even the best came with a price. At first, Rex did his job well. He patrolled Jackson's estate like a soldier, responding only to Jackson and a few trusted staff. But something began to change. He grew restless, aggressive, and unpredictable. Even the handlers who once admired him started backing away. One trainer claimed Rex nearly bit his hand off just for trying to refill his water bowl. Another simply left in the middle of the night, too afraid to give notice. The media caught wind of the story. Jackson, ever the showman, leaned into the attention. He appeared on local news, standing confidently beside Rex as the dog barked wildly behind a reinforced gate. "This dog," he said, "has been trained by the best. And yet, no one can calm him now. I'll give $1 million to the person who can." Some thought it was a joke. Others assumed it was a test away to find the next great trainer. Animal behaviorists, veterans, and self-proclaimed dog whisperers showed up, one after the other. None lasted more than a few minutes before they were either growled at, lunged at, or escorted out. Jackson stood by, amused. "Told you," he would say. But behind the headlines, Jackson was growing concerned. Rex had been his pride. Now he was a liability. He had to be kept in a custom-built kennel, surrounded by cameras and reinforced locks. Staff fed him by sliding bowls through a steel chute. He hadn't been walked in weeks. Even Jackson couldn't risk getting too close anymore. "He's not just aggressive," one expert warned. "He's scared. That's different. And more dangerous." But Jackson didn't want to hear it. He was used to control, used to power. The idea that a dog could defy him was almost insulting. So he kept the offer on the table. $1 million to anyone who could tame Rex. Then one quiet Tuesday morning, just as the sun rose over the hills of southern Oregon, a silver sedan pulled up to the estate. It didn't look like the kind of car a professional trainer would drive. Inside was a woman in her 30s, her husband behind the wheel, and a small girl in the back seat, barely 10 years old. The girl stared out the window, expression calm but distant, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the seat beside her. Jackson met them at the gate, confused. "You must be lost," he said. The woman smiled nervously. "We saw your interview. About the dog." Jackson looked past her toward the car. "You brought a child. She wanted to come," the woman replied. "We understand the risks." Jackson was about to decline, about to say this was no place for a little girl. But then the girl stepped out of the car, silent and steady. She walked right past Jackson, down the path toward the kennel, without a word. "Wait," Jackson started, but her mother touched his arm gently. "She has autism," she explained. "Her name is Ava. She doesn't talk much, but she connects with animals in a way we don't understand." Jackson watched as Ava approached the gate. Rex, already pacing inside, stopped suddenly. His ears perked. His growl faded. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Ava sat down cross-legged in front of the gate and began to hum a soft, slow melody, barely more than a whisper. And for the first time in months, Rex lay down. Jackson said nothing. He couldn't. His $1 million challenge had just been met by a girl who hadn't spoken a single word to him, and something deep inside him told him this was only the beginning. For Claire and Michael Evans, every day with their daughter Ava was a journey into the unknown. Diagnosed with autism when she was just 2 years old, Ava didn't speak often, avoided eye contact, and had never played like other children. But despite her quiet nature, she had always carried something powerful inside her, an awareness that seemed to extend beyond what others could see or hear. Her world was built on patterns. She liked the feel of soft blankets, the rhythm of turning pages in a book, and the low hum of certain songs. Some days were easy. Others were filled with silence and frustration. Claire, a speech therapist, and Michael, a high school math teacher, tried every method they could afford: occupational therapy, speech therapy, animal-assisted programs. While each had its moments, nothing seemed to reach Ava on a deep, lasting level. That changed one evening while Claire was folding laundry with the TV on in the background. A segment on the evening news caught her attention. a wealthy security mogul offering $1 million to anyone who could tame his uncontrollable guard dog. The video showed a huge snarling dog behind steel bars, barking so hard it shook the screen. But Claire wasn't watching the dog, she was watching Ava, who had walked in silently and was standing still, eyes locked on the screen. Claire muted the volume. Ava didn't look away. Instead, she tilted her head and pressed her hand against the TV, right over the image of the dog's face. Claire's heart skipped. Later that night, Claire jokingly told Michael about it. "Maybe she thinks she can help him," she said with a small laugh. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Ava with that dog? She's never done that before," Claire said quietly. "She's never reacted to anything on TV like that, not even cartoons." They didn't say much after that, but something lingered in both their minds. Over the next few days, Ava began drawing pictures of a dog that looked suspiciously like the one on TV. When Claire gently asked her if she liked him, Ava gave the smallest nod. By the end of the week, Claire was on the phone with Jackson Myers' assistant, explaining their situation. "We're not claiming we can win anything," she said carefully. "Our daughter she's drawn to animals, and we think it might be worth trying." The woman on the other end was skeptical, but agreed to schedule a visit. "Mr. Myers doesn't usually allow children near Rex," she warned, "but he's out of options." That Sunday morning, they packed a lunch, Ava's drawing pad, and her favorite noise-canceling headphones. As they pulled up to the estate, Claire's nerves were tangled in knots. The property was massive stone walls, steel gates, security, cameras on every corner. Rex's reputation was no joke. Jackson met them at the front entrance, arms crossed, brow raised. He was clearly sizing them up. His gaze lingered on Ava, who remained in the back seat, staring ahead. Claire stepped forward, trying to sound confident. "We appreciate the chance, Mr. Myers. We won't push her. If she doesn't want to try, we'll leave." Jackson didn't speak at first. Then, with a shrug, he opened the gate and pointed down the gravel path. "You've got 10 minutes. To everyone's surprise, Ava opened the car door on her own. She walked slowly, but directly, toward the path that led to Rex's kennel. She didn't speak, didn't look at her parents, didn't hesitate. Michael stayed close behind, ready to step in. But Claire reached for his arm. "Let her go," she whispered. As Ava approached the enclosure, Rex was already pacing inside. His ears twitched at the sound of her footsteps. Ava sat down just outside the gate, humming softly to herself. It wasn't a song Claire recognized, just a few gentle notes on repeat, like a lullaby made of air. Rex froze. His body went still. He turned his head toward Ava and stared, as if trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Slowly, almost cautiously, he stepped closer to the gate. Jackson watched from a few feet away, arms now uncrossed, lips slightly parted. "That's not possible," he muttered. Ava continued humming. She didn't move. Rex didn't growl. For nearly 15 minutes, they sat in a quiet stillness that felt heavier than sound. Finally, Ava leaned forward and placed her hand flat against the fence. And Rex, he pressed his nose gently to the same spot, right against her palm. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. Michael whispered, "I don't believe it," but Ava just smiled, still humming, her hand on the gate. She wasn't afraid. She was home. The air around Rex's enclosure was quiet, almost sacred. No barking, no growling, no tension rippling through his powerful frame. Jackson Myers had seen this dog lose control at the drop of a leaf, but now he watched in stunned silence as Rex calmly lay beside the gate, his eyes fixed on the little girl humming on the other side. Ava didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Her slow, steady hum filled the air like a soft breeze. She tapped her fingers gently on her knee, the rhythm consistent, familiar. To Claire, this was her daughter's language, a silent pattern that meant she felt safe. But what astonished her most was that Rex, a dog who had once lunged at steel bars and scared off grown men, was responding to that language. Jackson leaned in slightly, his voice lowered. "She's not doing anything. She's not giving him commands." Claire shook her head, never taking her eyes off Ava. "That's how she connects. She doesn't talk to people, but animals. She just feels them." Inside the enclosure, Rex moved again, slowly, purposefully. His thick tail brushed the ground behind him, not wagging quickly, but just enough to show his shift in emotion. He was curious, calm, open. Ava's hand reached forward, tiny and pale against the steel bars. For a moment, everyone held their breath. Rex pressed his nose gently to her palm. Claire gasped quietly. Michael stepped forward instinctively, unsure if he should intervene, but Ava remained still, her posture relaxed, her eyes blinking slowly. Jackson whispered, "That's the first time he's touched someone without snapping since March." Ava didn't seem to notice the reactions around her. She simply lowered her hand back into her lap and continued humming. Rex laid his head against the bottom of the gate, eyes half closed, completely at ease. It wasn't training, it wasn't discipline, it was trust, pure and simple. Michael finally found his voice. "Can she go inside?" Claire turned sharply. "No, not yet. Let's not push this." Jackson nodded, though he looked tempted. "Fair, but I've never seen him like this. Not even when I first bought him." They stayed like that for nearly 30 minutes. No one said much. Ava hummed. Rex listened, and something unexplainable passed between them. Eventually, Ava stood up. She gave Rex one last look, then turned and walked back to her parents. She didn't speak, didn't smile, just gently reached for her mother's hand. Claire held it, stunned. "She's done," Michael said, watching her with awe. Rex stood up for a second. He pressed his face against the bars again, as if to follow her. Then, without a sound, he retreated to the far corner of the kennel and lay down, his eyes still tracking the girl as she left. Jackson couldn't stop shaking his head. "I don't know what just happened, but I've seen combat dogs, rescue dogs, police canine south, and I've never seen a reaction like that." Claire was still processing everything. "She's never done that before, with anyone." "Do you think she could come back?" Jackson asked. Claire hesitated. "We'll have to see how she feels. She chooses when and how she connects. But if Rex wants her there, and she's willing... maybe." Michael added, "We didn't come here to win anything. She just wanted to meet him." Jackson looked down the path toward the kennel. "I've offered $1 million for someone to calm that dog, and your daughter just did it by sitting on the ground and humming." They exchanged contact information, and Jackson promised to clear the estate for her next visit. No press, no spectators, just Ava and Rex. As they got in the car and drove off, Ava finally spoke. Just 3 words, quiet and sure. "He's my friend." Claire turned to look at her. "Rex?" Ava nodded. Michael looked at Claire through the rearview mirror. "We're coming back, aren't we?" Claire didn't even hesitate. "Yes, we are." Back at the estate, Jackson stood alone near the kennel. Rex was curled up in the corner, peaceful. He hadn't barked in over an hour. Jackson whispered to himself, "A little girl just did what no trainer, no expert, no professional ever could." Then, with a deep breath, he smiled and said, "Maybe this isn't about taming the dog, maybe it's about healing the right way." And so, the story of a silent girl and a troubled dog began to unfold one quiet step at a time. The following week, the sun shone gently over the rolling green hills of Jackson Myers' estate. But for the first time in months, it wasn't the high-tech gates or sprawling mansion that drew attention. It was what was happening behind the steel bars of Rex's enclosure. At exactly 10 a.m., a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Inside sat Claire, Michael, and Ava, each quiet but aware that something unusual was beginning. Ava was dressed in her favorite sky blue sweater, holding a folded piece of paper in her lap. It was a drawing of a dog, sitting peacefully beside a little girl. No one had told her what to draw. She had done it that morning, without a word. Jackson met them at the front. His demeanor had softened since the last visit. Gone was the smug confidence of a man in control. Today, he looked more like someone holding his breath, hoping not to wake a fragile miracle. "She's ready?" he asked, voice lower than usual. Claire nodded. "She's been asking for him." This time, Ava didn't wait for permission. She quietly opened the car door and walked toward Rex's enclosure like it was something she had done 100 times. The moment her shoes touched the gravel, Rex appeared. He wasn't barking, he wasn't pacing, he was waiting. Jackson blinked, in disbelief. He's been restless all morning. The second her car pulled in, he sat down. Ava approached the gate and sat cross-legged in the exact spot she had before. She took the drawing from her lap, folded it neatly, and pushed it through the small gap under the fence. Rex sniffed at the paper, then rested his head beside it. To everyone watching, it looked like he understood. It had been made just for him. Claire and Michael watched from a few yards away, hearts full and anxious. They didn't want to interfere, but every part of them wanted to protect their daughter. Still, There was no fear in Ava's posture. She sat calmly, gently tapping her fingers against her knee and humming once again. Rex inched forward, now only a breath away from the bars. His ears twitched as he listened to her melody. With a slow movement, he lay down completely, his nose against the gate, tail sweeping gently across the floor. This time, something new happened. Ava reached out and placed her hand inside the gate, just on it. Claire's breath caught, but she didn't move. Rex didn't flinch. He pressed his face into her palm and closed his eyes. "She's not afraid," Michael whispered. "She knows him. Somehow. She just knows." Jackson's voice cracked slightly. "I've spent 6 figures on experts, behaviorists, military trainers. They all told me he was too far gone. But she walks in here with a drawing and a hum, and he melts." For nearly 40 minutes, Ava and Rex sat together in silence. Every few minutes, Ava would hum a new rhythm, slightly different tones, but always soft, always slow. Rex's tail would move each time, like he was listening to a language only they shared. Claire stepped closer to Jackson. "It's not a trick. She doesn't perform. She doesn't even speak much to us. But when she's around animals, she becomes someone else. Or maybe, her truest self." Jackson swallowed hard. "I believe it." He walked closer to the enclosure, cautiously. Rex opened one eye, looked at him, then returned to resting. "That's the calmest I've ever seen him around someone standing nearby," Jackson said. Ava turned to him. "You don't have to yell." The words were simple, but they hit like thunder. It was the first time she had spoken directly to him. Claire blinked back tears. Ava rarely initiated speech with strangers. The fact that she had chosen to now meant something profound. Jackson knelt beside her, not too close. "Thank you, Ava, for whatever you're doing." She looked back at Rex, who had just yawned deeply and rolled onto his side like a dog, completely at ease. "He's listening," she said. "He doesn't like when people talk loud. It makes his heart race." Jackson sat back, stunned. No one ever noticed that. Not one person. Ava didn't say anything else. She just kept humming as Rex drifted into a gentle sleep. That night, Jackson called his head of security and said, "Put the trainers on hold. We're going in a new direction." When asked what direction that was, he simply replied, "Whatever direction Ava wants to go." Because sometimes, the right connection doesn't come from experience or education, but from quiet hearts that recognize each other in silence. In the weeks that followed, the estate became a place of quiet transformation. Ava visited twice a week, each time arriving with a new drawing, a new melody, or simply her calm presence. With every visit, Rex responded like a dog waking up from a long, fearful dream. His snarls became yawns, his pacing turned into stillness, and slowly, something even more astonishing began to happen. Rex started looking for Ava when she wasn't there. Jackson Myers had never seen anything like it. The dog, who had once sent seasoned handlers running, now pressed his nose against the gate on Tuesdays and Fridays, waiting for the little girl in the blue sweater to arrive. If she was late, he grew restless. If she missed a day, he refused to eat until the next visit. Ava, in her own quiet way, had become the anchor in his world. One afternoon, Claire brought Ava in with a new item in her hands, a soft hand-knitted blanket in pastel colors. She said Ava had chosen the yarn herself. No one told her to make it. She had simply decided that Rex might like something soft. As soon as she laid the blanket on the ground inside the enclosure, Rex trotted over, sniffed it, and immediately laid down on top of it, as if it had always belonged to him. He even wagged his tail, something he hadn't done in public since before the aggression began. "He's changing," Jackson said quietly, watching from the doorway. "I didn't think it was possible." Claire nodded. "He's not the only one." Ava had begun showing signs of growth too. At home, she was more expressive, singing short tunes at the dinner table, reaching out for her parents' hands more often. One night, she even asked to paint a picture with Claire, instead of alone like she usually preferred. The ripples of her bond with Rex were spreading beyond the estate gates and into her everyday life. Jackson, who had once prided himself on structure and discipline, now found himself sitting by the enclosure, asking Ava questions about Rex and actually listening. One afternoon, he brought her a photo album of Rex from when he was a pup. She flipped through the pages slowly, smiling every time she came across a picture where Rex looked playful and free. "Can he be like that again?" Jackson asked. Ava looked up at him. "He still is. He just forgot for a while." The words were simple, but they struck Jackson deeply. He had built his empire on control and force, and yet here was a little girl reminding him that gentleness had its own kind of power. Inspired by what he was witnessing, Jackson began to rethink how he ran his company. He started researching therapy animals, emotional intelligence in dogs, and even reached out to autism advocates to learn more about how Ava might be experiencing the world. He wasn't just trying to help Rex anymore. He was learning to see things through a new lens. One day, Jackson asked Ava if she'd like to try something different. "We've never let anyone inside with Rex before," he said carefully, "but he trusts you. Would you like to go in?" Claire hesitated. Ava doesn't do well with sudden changes. It has to be her decision. Ava looked at Rex, then at the open gate. Without a word, she stood up and slowly walked inside. Rex stood as well, but not out of alarm. His body was loose, relaxed, almost excited. He padded up to her and gently bumped his head against her shoulder. Ava giggled, a sound Claire hadn't heard in years. Ava sat down on the blanket, and Rex curled up beside her, resting his head in her lap. Jackson couldn't believe his eyes. "He's never let anyone that close. Not even me," Claire whispered. "It's not about training. It never was. She sees the part of him no one else does." That moment was captured by one of the estate's surveillance cameras. Jackson normally didn't keep personal footage, but this clip he saved. He called it the day Rex remembered. From then on, Rex was no longer the million-dollar menace. He became something else, calm, connected, and full of potential. And Ava, the girl who rarely spoke, had become his voice. What began as an impossible challenge was becoming a story no one could have predicted, and it was far from over. Word of Ava and Rex's growing bond began to spread beyond Jackson Meyer's estate walls. What started as quiet visits soon turned into quiet headlines. Reporters had caught wind of the transformation. The dog no one could tame, tamed by a 10-year-old with autism. Jackson received dozens of calls from networks, journalists, and dog trainers wanting interviews, but he said no to all of them for now. "This isn't about a show," he told his assistant. "This is about two beings that found peace in each other." Behind the scenes, he was preparing something big. He hadn't forgotten the words he had so boldly spoken on live TV. $1 million reward to whoever could calm Rex. At first, it had been a challenge, almost a dare. Now, it felt like a promise made to a little girl who never asked for a prize. Jackson invited Claire, Michael, and Ava to the estate on a warm Saturday afternoon. He asked them to meet him near the open-air garden where Rex was now, often brought to rest and stretch. Rex had changed so much that Jackson no longer needed to keep him behind steel bars. Under Ava's influence, he had become calm and manageable, even around staff. When they arrived, Ava immediately walked to Rex, who was lying under a shady tree. She handed him a hand-drawn card. Inside was a crayon picture of the two of them, and the words, "My friend Rex," written in careful block letters. Rex licked her hand, then placed his head gently in her lap. Jackson stood nearby, holding a folder. "Claire, Michael," he began, "I meant what I said on television. I offered $1 million to anyone who could calm Rex. Your daughter did more than that. She healed him. I'd like to give her the reward." Claire blinked, stunned. Michael opened his mouth but didn't speak. "We can't accept that," Claire finally said. "She didn't do this for money. She just connected." "I know," Jackson replied. "That's why it means even more. But it's not a check in an envelope. It's a trust fund in Ava's name. She can use it for her future education, therapy, whatever she needs. I've also made a donation in her honor to 3 autism research and support foundations." Michael put a hand on Claire's back, both of them overwhelmed. "Ava doesn't always know how to explain things," Claire said gently, "but she feels everything. She feels love. She feels calm. And I believe she felt Rex's fear too. She didn't just calm him, she reminded him that he was safe." Jackson knelt beside Ava. "You're very special, Ava. Do you know what you did?" Ava looked down at Rex. He was scared. "I showed him my quiet." Jackson smiled. "And he heard you." That moment was captured in a photo. Jackson on one knee, Ava seated beside Rex, and the sun filtering through the trees. It would later appear in magazines and websites, but it was never shared by the family. Jackson made sure the image was protected and only shared with permission. This wasn't about fame. It was about something much deeper. Soon after, Jackson arranged for a small, private gathering at the estate. He invited local families, animal therapists, autism support workers, and a few trusted reporters. Ava and Rex were the quiet stars of the event. No speeches, no flashing cameras, just a peaceful space where people witnessed something extraordinary. At one point, a little boy with sensory challenges approached Ava shyly, holding a stuffed animal. She didn't say a word, just smiled and gently let him sit beside her and Rex. The dog didn't move, only blinked slowly as the boy leaned against his side. Claire and Michael watched, hands clasped, hearts full. "She's not just helping Rex anymore," Michael said. "She's helping others see what quiet can do." That evening, Jackson made an announcement to the small crowd. "I used to believe in control, in power, in force. But now, I believe in listening. Ava taught me that. That's why, starting today, we're launching a new program, Quiet Hearts. It's a foundation that will sponsor therapy dogs for children with autism. And it's named after the girl who showed me what real calm looks like." The crowd applauded softly. Ava, still sitting with Rex, looked up and gave a small smile. It was $1 million promise that turned into something greater, a movement. One that didn't just change a dog or a family, it was beginning to change the world. Months passed, and the story of Ava and Rex grew quietly but steadily. What had started as a private bond between a little girl and a troubled dog had blossomed into something bigger, a new purpose for both of them. Jackson Myers, once known for his tough no-nonsense business style, had become a champion for therapy dogs and autism awareness. With the launch of the Quiet Hearts Foundation, he began working with schools, hospitals, and community centers to bring specially trained therapy dogs to children who needed them most. And at the heart of it all was Rex, now a gentle giant who had transformed from a guarded, aggressive dog into a patient, loving companion. Ava visited the estate less frequently than before. But every time she arrived, Rex greeted her like an old friend, tail wagging slowly, eyes bright with recognition. The once feared dog now followed her lead, responding to the soft hums and rhythms that only they shared. One crisp autumn morning, Jackson invited a group of special education teachers and therapists to the estate. His goal was to introduce Rex and Ava as part of a demonstration on the powerful connection between therapy, animals, and children with special needs. The room was filled with anticipation and a few skeptics. After all, Rex's past was well known. Ava sat quietly near Rex, her small hand resting lightly on his thick fur. Jackson explained how their bond had opened new doors for understanding animal behavior and emotional connection. As the session began, Ava was encouraged to interact with Rex in her own way, humming softly, tapping out rhythms on her lap, and occasionally whispering a word or two. Rex responded instantly, moving closer to her side, relaxing completely. The educators watched, fascinated. One woman, a speech therapist, whispered to Jackson, "I've never seen a dog respond to nonverbal cues like that. It's incredible." Jackson nodded. "It's about empathy, understanding beyond words. Ava and Rex communicate in a language we're only just beginning to understand." After the session, Jackson invited the group to tour the new Quiet Hearts training facility, a bright open space where dogs and children could interact under the guidance of trained professionals. Rex, ever the gentle ambassador, accompanied them, moving calmly through the rooms and greeting children with soft eyes and wagging tail. One of the teachers knelt beside Ava and Rex. "Ava, how does Rex make you feel?" Ava thought for a moment, then smiled. "Safe." The word hung in the air, so simple, yet so profound. Over the next few months, Ava and Rex became regular visitors to schools and therapy centers. Their story inspired other families to consider the healing power of animals. Jackson made sure their visits remained private and low-key, respecting Ava's quiet nature and Rex's need for calm. Meanwhile, the Quiet Hearts Foundation grew. Donations poured in from people touched by the story of the little girl who calmed the dog no one else could. New therapy dogs were trained, matching children with animals who could understand their unique needs. Jackson often found himself reflecting on how much he had learned from Ava and Rex. He spoke openly at conferences about patience, compassion, and the unexpected ways healing can happen. One evening, as the sun set behind the estate, Jackson watched Ava playing quietly with Rex in the garden. The dog rolled on his back, inviting a gentle belly rub. Ava laughed softly, her hands moving carefully over his fur. Jackson smiled and whispered to himself, "Sometimes, the biggest battles are won, not with strength, but with kindness." And in that moment, he knew the journey wasn't just about taming a dog, it was about opening hearts, one quiet step at a time. Years later, the story of Ava and Rex had become a quiet legend, whispered with awe in therapy circles and admired in communities across the country. The dog who once terrified everyone he met was now a symbol of transformation, and the little girl who calmed him had grown into a young woman whose gentle spirit inspired countless others. Ava, now 16, remained as reserved as ever, but her bond with Rex had only deepened. The two were inseparable. Where Ava went, Rex followed, a calm presence at her side through the ups and downs of adolescence, though she spoke sparingly. Those close to her understood that her quiet demeanor was filled with wisdom and kindness. Jackson Myers, once a man driven by control and power, had changed in profound ways. He had become a vocal advocate for autism, awareness and therapy animal programs, speaking at conferences and donating millions through the Quiet Hearts Foundation. But more than that, he had become a student of empathy, humbled by the lessons he had learned from a little girl and a dog. One crisp spring afternoon, Jackson invited Ava and her family back to his estate to celebrate Rex's 10th birthday. It was a private affair, a small gathering of close friends, family, and a few of the therapists and teachers who had been part of Ava's journey. The estate was alive with laughter, soft music, and the gentle hum of appreciation for a life changed forever. As the sun began to set, Ava sat quietly beneath her favorite oak tree, Rex curled up at her feet. Jackson approached her, carrying a small, wrapped box. "For you," he said softly. Kneeling beside her, Ava unwrapped the gift carefully. Inside was a silver pendant, shaped like a paw print, engraved with the words "Quiet Hearts." Her eyes brightened as she looked up. Jackson smiled. He gave more than $1 million worth of calm to Rex, but the real gift was something money can't buy. Ava reached out and touched the pendant, then leaned into Rex, who rested his head gently on her lap. Jackson's voice grew thick with emotion. "You changed my life. You changed Rex's life. And you've changed the lives of so many others." Later, that evening, as the party wound down, Ava's parents pulled Jackson aside. "We want to thank you," Claire said, "for believing in her, for giving her the chance." Jackson shook his head. "No thank you. Ava taught me to listen, to understand what's really important, to find strength in quiet moments." He paused. "I used to think I controlled everything, but she showed me that sometimes the most powerful control is letting go." As darkness settled over the estate, Ava and Rex sat together in silence. The years of struggle, the $1 million bet, the transformation, it all felt like a distant memory now. What remained was simple: a quiet girl, a gentle dog, and a bond that had healed them both. In a world often filled with noise and chaos, their story was a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength lies in stillness, and the deepest connections are made without words. And that was a lesson worth more than any $1 million bet.